Welcome to Be Your Own Advocate. And today, as part of our program, we're going to introduce Andrea Chronister, who is going to be focusing on the caregiving aspect of what we talk about here all the time. You know, the caregivers that give the care, that receive the care, that once somebody they're caring for passes on, how do they deal with it? But what she's going to be doing is talking to different people from all aspects of being a caregiver, providing information and knowledge, but also being able to just share and have other caregivers, know that there's a community of people that do care. So welcome, Andrea, to Be Your Own Advocate. So I know we were talking a little bit before about all the things that you've gone through to come to this point in your life of and how much of your time of your life has been as a caregiver. Not that you planned it, right?
Just no, it's never planned. I think, that's what I told Isaiah. It takes a very type of special individual to do something so selfless and unconditional. It speaks volumes about one's true character. But and with me, I like the ability to say no, especially for those that I really do care about, and knowing with my knowledge and skill set as a nurse that I have the ability to be able to do a little bit more than the average caregiver, just having that background and that connection with the healthcare and medical community. It really has.
Because you're a nurse.
Yeah, it helps definitely benefit, because then it's something that I can take whatever, if somebody doesn't understand that I'm caring for, and break that into layman's terms, make it easier to understand so it's not as overwhelming. And so that's what I'm doing currently with my ex-husband. He's like, a lot of times he'll be like, talk to her. I have no idea what you're saying. So, tell her that information so that she can break that down for me. So,
God, what an important point, because, when people, a lot of times you just listen and you say yes, but you don't really understand it. So you being the interpreter, I suppose that's what a lot of people are missing. As being a caregiver, you're supposed to be not knowledgeable about things that you really don't understand. Yeah, that's the big point, isn't it?
Yeah, it definitely is. And well, just like with Barbara, I had the opportunity to talk to her, and she really taught herself a significant amount of information about her husband's condition, about treatment, and it took a lot. So you have a lot more work to do to build to that.
Yeah, that's right. Insurance. Yeah, all of it. There's every aspect of it you have to become knowledgeable about if you're going to take on that responsibility. Yeah, it's something you're right. It's just all encompassing.
And so I kind of feel like being a nurse gives me a head start. Not that I know, trust me, because there's, I've been off the floor for a while. I'm now working in the pediatric home health setting where I care for, actually I have 2 trach and vented patients that I care for. They receive 24-hour care. I do 12 hours. I do 3 days a week or 3 nights a week. So I've been off the floor for a little bit. So it kind of is me diving back into that and refreshing my skills and my knowledge and my level of competency, but still nonetheless going into the caregiving role. The first time, which was with David, still I have a little bit of a head start than a lot of the regular caregivers that don't have that. They're not fortunate enough to have a little bit of that background. And I think having that knowledge, it sort of eases the stress because you do understand it better. And it gives you that ability, like I said, to break it down for that person that you were taking care of, to put it in simple terms.
So you're going to have guests on that are caregivers. Is that the goal, is to have other people on that can tell their story and, provide information? What happens when a person gets stuck being a caregiver and they don't want to be a caregiver? Like you said, it takes a certain kind of person. And Isaiah just went through that, and he loved who he was caring for, but it was just a whole nother thing that had to be attended to in a loving, caring way, which you did a good job with that with your Grammy. But what some people just don't want to do it.
So it's finding, one, I think that I feel like a lot of them struggle with the guilt of that's how they feel. You get overwhelmed, you do get resentful. You get burnout, you burn out. And so if that's something they feel like, look, I need to take a step back from this, I can't do this anymore. What can you do to help me? So providing them with the right resource and information so it provides them with the ability to be able to take a break, to be able to try to step out of that. And sometimes, though, the sad thing is options are limited. So trying to place them with the right resource, right type of assistance so that it can make that possible for them.
Yeah.
I mean, I experienced that. I feel like a lot of times I'm doing double duty, if you will, being nurse and taking care of him. This go around, just because this is my actually second time taking care of him, but third time being a caregiver. I with this time, I feel like I struggle a lot more with resentment, and I burn out a lot quicker, and trying to really fight with the system to bring in additional services that would help provide me with some relief.
Yeah, right.
Sometimes it's a struggle. So being able to dive into that and help them navigate the system where they can be able to find that resource so they can take a step back.
So that you're going to be providing a lot of the information
Yes.
for every show, that the the information about everything, because it is an empty field that people that are totally unprepared have to move into. And the fact that you're going to give them that information, I think, is so important.
And
They don't
there's
feel
40 something million caregivers, full-time caregivers in the US. I mean, it's insane, how big it is, how many people are involved, and how little the conversation's happening. I feel like I'm only coming into this caregiving conversation a lot more now at this stage of my life. I'm curious, like I said, there's not a lot of silver linings to caregiving sometimes. It just feels like, what is going on here? Why is this so? It's like one hard thing after another. It just sometimes gets worse and worse. I don't know. I'm just curious, like your perspective of, if I work 40 hours a week, I don't know, doing some physical labor, I'm doing construction, I'm building, I'm doing details, I'm working hard all day long, 50 hours a week, right? But somehow in the caregiving role, there's a whole nother level of stress to that. It's not just the mechanics of doing things and working hard and being tired. There's like another realm. I'm curious if you could talk a little bit about like what else is involved and why is it so difficult to be there and do that job for people?
I think that it's, as far as it depends on who you're taking care of. I mean, obviously, regardless, it's still going to be emotionally, mentally stressful, but especially you kind of factor in that personal aspect of who you're caring for. As far as I can speak from my perspective, that's where the additional stress, the additional, as far as just physically draining sort of experience that it can be, and frustration, because this is somebody that you care for. And in my situation, this is the father of my child. It was difficult for David. Yes, caring for him and watching him slip away painfully and slowly. But I didn't have, like, we were not married. We didn't have kids. So it was different. But with Bruce, for me personally, it just, it's really hard sometimes for me, because of being a nurse, to separate that role as nurse into caregiver. And granted, yes, I'm applying my skill set, my knowledge, but at the same time, there's that personal aspect. And it's so very hard to be able to separate that specifically. And it is so much more deeply personal, because this is a father of my child. And our son, he's 12. I know you guys read that he's on the autism spectrum, and he's very bright and for the most part high functioning. But as is with any kid, especially when you're losing a spouse, partner, whatever, that whomever you share that child with, it's sometimes there's no words to what you feel and how overwhelmed that you can get, just the thought of, because my goal is to try to be able to give him as much quality time with his dad as possible. And we're up against so many things. So going back to, that's where it becomes all the more, to me, overwhelming, because not only am I having to sort of downshift and switch roles into caregivers, like, okay, I can't be that strict nurse. I can't necessarily push him the way that I push my patients. I have to sort of dial it back, and it's sometimes admit the fact that I can't always be in control. I got to give him space, because being in that role, that's my comfort. That's my go-to. That's where I thrive. I walk into a situation and I run that specific as far as that area. I'm great at that, and I can't do that with him all the time. I have to learn how to gauge and sort of switch in and out of caregiver, and nurse, mom, and to me, despite the fact that, and I think people find it very puzzling because we are divorced, but we share a child together. I have so much love and respect for him, and to me, he's my best friend. So, I have all these little areas I have to learn to sort of move in and out of, and what role to play and where my boundaries are. And so I have a really difficult time with that. So that's kind of like from my personal perspective.
I'm excited for, the program and the people that you're going to talk to and the information that you're going to bring out. It's going to be very, very interesting and very exciting. Do you know who your first guest is going to be?
I'm hoping to get Kara Benson, and she's with Hidden Heroes. She's also a caregiver. She does a lot of legislative work and advocating for caregivers as far as from veteran and military perspective. So that's my hope. The VA, Bruce's palliative care team, his pain management palliative care physician, is actually the one that wanted to get us in contact. She said, you guys have a lot of very similar characteristics. You're both very driven and very active in the veteran community and advocacy. So that's my goal.
That's great. That's great. Right, Isaiah?
Yeah. I'm excited. I love it. I think it's so important and such an undervalued, under-resourced conversation that anyone who's in the caregiving role can benefit so much from it. I think it makes so much sense. You got to, put your mask on before you help someone else. And it's like so cliche, but there's nothing more true. When you're involved in caregiving, if you are not caring for yourself and getting resourced in different ways, it's not going to work.
That's right.
That's as big a part of caretaking as anything else you could do for someone else. So anything you can bring to that conversation and help someone I'm excited about.
Yeah, me too.
Truly, truly hope. That's what I told Barbara. One of the questions I had when she, had made the suggestion to do this. And it actually started with Justin Baker and the Veterans Take Charge show. So when I started doing David's Foundation, they brought me in as a guest. So we kind of had this on a 8-year history together. And so he's the one that made the suggestion. And when I talked to Barbara the first time, I'm like, what do I have to offer? And she said, you have a lot more to offer than what you think. And I hope I answered your question, Isaiah, as far as that level of difficulty, and I can't speak for others. I can only speak from my personal experiences. So I hope that kind of.
I think you did, it's like there's the mechanics of the job, which is one thing, but the emotion of it is a whole nother. And then the mental stress, the gap in communication that happens with loved ones a lot of times, and then you're in that dependency role. It's really challenging. It's really important to talk about and resource people with more and more opportunities to how to approach this and take care of themselves. So I'm excited. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's going to be fun. It's going to be helpful, and it's going to be educational for us too. So. Thank you so much. I look forward to having you part of the team.
Thank you for bringing me on.